Imagine a multi-billion-dollar American weapon system being publicly humiliated in its own backyard by a fighter jet from a neutral country that doesn't even belong to a major military alliance in a series of classified combat exercises, data that was never meant to see the light of day, this underdog aircraft systematically dismantled. Some of the most advanced warplanes the United States has ever built. The results were so one-sided, so embarrassing, that senior Pentagon officials allegedly tried to bury the full reports. What you're about to hear isn't speculation or internet rumor. It's a documented trail of diplomatic back channels, leaked exercise summaries, and a brewing political storm that threatens to sever America's most critical defense pact. It all centers on a machine engineered in a country with a population smaller than New York City. A machine that does the one thing America's prized stealth fighter can't: it wins. If you believe military strength is about who spends the most, you're about to be shocked. I'm breaking this down on winds of thought because the mainstream press is either ignoring it or burying it under political headlines. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss the conclusion of this. The fuse was lit not in a war zone, but during a routine television interview. The newly appointed U.S. ambassador to Canada, a direct political appointee, sat down with a Canadian broadcaster and delivered what can only be described as an ultimatum. The message was simple: if Canada proceeds with its plan to buy the Swedish-made Saab Gripen fighter jet instead of the American F-35, there would be repercussions. He explicitly stated that NORAD, the binational command that has guarded our continent for 70 years, would have to be, in his words, altered. He painted a picture of American F-35 as flooding Canadian airspace to fill the gap, effectively treating a sovereign ally's territory as an extension of the U.S. Air Force's training range. This wasn't a backroom negotiation leak. This was a public shaming of a nation that has bled alongside American soldiers in every major conflict for over a century. But here's the twist that turns this from a political spat into a military scandal. The jet the ambassador dismissed as a cheap alternative, the one he implied wasn't fit for North American defense, possesses a combat record in simulated warfare that reads like a fever dream for F-35 critics. Let's rewind to Exercise Red Flag. Alaska, 2006. This is the Super Bowl of air combat, hosted by the U.S. Air Force. The Swedish Air Force showed up with their Gripens and were assigned to the red team, the underdogs. They were given less support, less intel, and were expected to be target practice for the American-led blue team. What happened next forced a rewrite of the playbook. According to former Swedish Air Force engineers present, the Gripens linked their onboard computers, creating an improvised mobile command grid. They essentially built their own radar network in the sky. On the very first day, they bagged 10 simulated kills among their victims. A Eurofighter Typhoon, one of Europe's finest. But the real headline was the single Gripen pilot who, in a close-range dogfight, eliminated 5 F-16s, 5 of America's workhorse fighters, gone in a single sortie. And the humiliation didn't stop there. Throughout the entire 2-week exercise, the Gripen force recorded 0 losses in air-to-air combat, not one. They also completed 100% of their planned missions, while other aircraft, including advanced American jets, were grounded due to weather. The Gripen, designed for Sweden's rough climate, simply laughed at the rain and flew. Was this a fluke? A lucky shot? Let's look at Norway. In joint exercises, 3 Gripens were pitted against 5 Norwegian F-16s. The results were a massacre: 5-0, 5-0, and 5-1. 3 jets consistently wiped the floor with 5 of America's most exported fighters. In exercise Loyal Arrow over Sweden, a single Gripen acting as the aggressor intercepted 3 U.S. Air Force F-15 Eagles. The final tally: 2 Eagles shot down, 1 barely escaped by using its raw engine power to flee the fight. That's not an inferior product, that's a predator. These aren't just statistics. They are a fundamental challenge to the narrative of American air dominance. The Gripen isn't a stealth jet, but it's proving that stealth isn't the only path to victory. It's proving that in a real fight, the battle isn't just won by the plane with the lowest radar cross-section, but by the system that can think, adapt, and operate. When the support infrastructure is gone. Why can it do this? Because Sweden built it for a war they knew they couldn't win by spending more than Russia. They built it to be a survivor. The Gripen is designed to operate from a 500-meter stretch of highway, rearmed and refueled in under 20 minutes by a team of conscripts with basic tools. No climate-controlled hangars, no specialized computer carts. It's a guerrilla fighter in a world of heavyweight boxers. Now compare that to the F-35, a marvel of technology, yes, but one that requires a small city of support. Its readiness rates have been a perennial headache for commanders. And here's where the dollar figures get staggering. The Gripen costs between $7,000 and $10,000 per hour to fly. The F-35. Estimates range from 30,000 to over 44,000 per hour. Even at the most conservative math, you can fly a Gripen 3 to 4 times for the cost of a single F-35 flight. Over the life of a fleet, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars, money that in the F-35 world is burned on maintenance and fuel instead of pilot training and actual combat readiness. This cost issue has even created a bizarre contradiction at the highest levels of the U.S. government. President Trump himself has criticized the F-35E's cost, calling it out of control. His own tech advisor, Elon Musk, has publicly declared the F-35 obsolete in the age of drones, and yet the ambassador appointed by that same president is threatening an ally for considering a cheaper, more available alternative. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a wing spar. And the global market is noticing this contradiction. America's allies are starting to vote with their checkbooks and their sovereignty. Portugal and Spain shelved their F-35 ambitions after trade disputes with Washington. Switzerland scaled back its order after the final price tag ballooned. But the most chilling warning came from Denmark. A sitting member of their defense committee publicly advised Canada to choose another fighter jet. He cited the fact that their F-35s are in repair half the time and, more importantly, that the United States holds the ultimate kill switch. By controlling the spare parts and software updates, Washington could theoretically ground the entire Danish Air Force overnight. That is power no ally wants a partner to have. Meanwhile, the Gripen is on a sales blitz. Colombia signed a massive deal for 17 new jets. Brazil is assembling them locally, and Saab has put a huge offer on the table for Canada. 72 Gripens plus 6 Global surveillance aircraft, a deal that they claim will create over 12,000 Canadian jobs. But here's the trapdoor in this whole story. The U.S. might still have a card to play. The latest Gripen model uses a General Electric engine, an American engine. This gives Washington potential leverage via export controls. There are whispers from defense insiders that the U.S. has privately warned Canada that if they buy the Gripen, they could be cut out of the ultra-classified NORAD intelligence network, essentially buy our plane or we won't share the data that tells you what's coming over the North Pole. For the average American taxpayer funding this $1.8 trillion program, the question has to be asked. Is this strong-arm tactic making us safer, or is it just enriching a single contractor while alienating the partners we need to win the next war? Let's be clear about the capabilities here. The F-35 is a sensor fusion beast. Its stealth and electronic warfare suite are second to none. In a strike mission against a heavily defended target, it's the clear choice. But the Gripen answers a different, more terrifying question. What happens after the first wave? What happens when the bases are hit, the hangars are rubble, and you need a jet that can take off from a damaged highway, get a kill land, refuel with a hand pump, and get back in the air before the enemy's second wave arrives? The F-35 can't do that. The Gripen was born to do that. Calling the Gripen an inferior product isn't just inaccurate propaganda. It's a dangerous underestimation of a foe. It's the same arrogance that led American pilots at Red Flag to underestimate a handful of Swedish jets, a mistake that resulted in their virtual destruction. The real world isn't a PowerPoint slide. It's chaotic, it's ugly, and it punishes arrogance. If you've made it this far, you understand why this story matters. It's not about which plane is faster in a straight line. It's about trust. It's about the future of the alliances that have underpinned global stability for 80 years. Polls now show that over 70% of Canadians support buying the Gripen, when America's closest friends are actively seeking alternatives to American weaponry. The foundation of our defense network begins to crack. And if that network cracks because we were too arrogant to respect a Swedish fighter, too aggressive to treat our allies as partners, then the number of F-35s in the hangar won't matter. We'll be flying them alone, blind, and against a world that has learned to adapt without us. That is a future that keeps strategic planners awake at night, and it should keep you awake too. Thank you for watching Winds of Thought. If you want to see more deep dives like this, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. I'll be tracking the Canada decision closely, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay in the loop. Let me know in the comments, is the F-35 a $1 trillion asset or a $1 trillion liability?